The NBA is full of incredibly talented players. There is so much talent in the NBA that to even be mentioned in the top 10 is an incredible honor. I imagine. I'm not an NBA player, but still. Now my favorite player in the NBA is Jimmy Butler. First of all, the perimeter defense is easily top 3. Jimmy always matches up against the best perimeter defender every night and noticeably slows them down or even shuts them down. And he does this all while also scoring 20 plus points every night. But before we dive into the stats, let's just acknowledge that Jimmy Butler is a hard worker. Jimmy Butler went from homeless to an all-star. Started from the bottom and now he is here. And I would also recommend watching Mike Orzemba's video on Jimmy Butler. Link will be in the description. Jimmy is the perfect example of what hard work can get you. Jimmy went from a second division college player to a bench forward at Marquette to a starter as a senior averaging 16 points per game to the 30th pick to an all-star guard and the face of an NBA franchise. So now that we've gotten that out of the way, let's first list who the top 10 players in the NBA are. Number 1 is LeBron James. Even as a Bulls fan, I have to acknowledge that LeBron is the best player in the NBA. For me, number 2 is Kawhi Leonard. Check out my Kawhi video. With his defense and efficiency, it's hard to top that. Number 3 has to be Russell Westbrook. Dude's gonna average a triple-double. If he was more efficient, he would be number 2 on my list. Number 4 and 5 are either Kevin Durant or Anthony Davis. Can't decide. Number 6 is Stephen Curry. Number 7 is Demarcus Cousins. And after that, it's kind of a cluster F. Paul George, Kyrie Irving, John Wall, Chris Paul, Blake Griffin, Damian Lillard, and James Harden. I think Jimmy Butler can get into that conversation. So let's break it down. First, I'd call it close between Harden and Jimmy. Harden is better offensively, but he's still a meme on defense. But for the sake of versatility, I'd give Butler a slight edge over Harden. Damian Lillard, same thing. Dame is a better offensive player, but Jimmy's defense gives him the edge over video game Dame. Same thing for Kyrie Irving. John Wall, Chris Paul, Blake Griffin, and Paul George are the guys that we really have to look into the stats to determine if Jimmy is better than them. Let's start with Blake Griffin, as he is the hardest to compare of these 4. Blake is the second best player on his team, so that's already a negative. The next is his defense. It's very meh. With his athleticism and size, the fact that he isn't pinning shots against the backboard is just plain disappointing. But let's entertain the offense at least. Right now, he's averaging 21.2 points and about 9 rebounds along with 4.7 assists per game. In comparison, Jimmy Butler is averaging 24.6 points, 6.6 rebounds, and 4.3 assists. So offensively, Jimmy is better, and defensively, he is way better. So Jimmy is a better player than Blake Griffin. Next, we will compare him to John Wall and Chris Paul, because they are both guards. Obviously, they beat him in assists. Wall averages 10, and CP3 averages 9.5. Also, right now, John Wall is averaging 23.6 points. And let me just speak on that real quick. John Wall is the best point guard in the East, and he doesn't get the recognition of that. Chris Paul is averaging 17.7 points, and both of these guys are really good defensively. Now, John Wall this season has been better than Chris Paul, so I'll put him maybe above Jimmy, because I can't use the defense argument. And I can't ignore those 10 assists to go along with 23 points. But I will put Jimmy above Chris Paul at least this season. Next is Paul George, and this is where it's about to get real. This is really the debate of who is the second best player in the East. I saved Paul last because he is a wing like Butler is this season, and when Jimmy moved to small forward, I was actually afraid his points and percentages might dip because he's been a guard for his entire time in the NBA. But he proved me wrong by jumping up by 4 points per game. Anyways, here's the bomb I'm gonna drop. Jimmy Butler is the second best player in the East. Jimmy Butler is better than Paul George, at least this season. Yeah, I'm aware Paul has been better than Jimmy, literally every other season. But at least this season, Jimmy is the second best player in the East. Here's the proof. Paul George is averaging 22.2 points per game, 6.6 rebounds, and 3.3 assists, while averaging basically the same percentage as Jimmy Butler. So I'm gonna say Jimmy Butler is better than Paul George, Chris Paul, and Blake Griffin. I'd actually call John Wall about even, maybe even better than Butler, which actually makes Jimmy the third best player in the NBA, but whatever. Where exactly on that top 10 is a little questionable and hard to say. Now that's the end of this video. Quick disclaimer, me saying Jimmy Butler is a better player than someone or another isn't meant to be disrespectful. Jimmy's just a really good player. I'd recommend checking out my Harrison Barnes video. I would recommend my Kawhi video, but it's already got 100+ views. Like and subscribe, and I'm out.